Hi, everybody. It's Warren.
Hey, Warren.
Hey, how are you? I kept getting when I clicked the links, I kept getting a password and stuff, just so you know. But I might be wrong. Other people are getting on. What's up, Mia?
Nothing much. Can't
Everything
complain.
good? Excellent. And Alexander, how are you? Okay, I'll go on to Dexter. Dexter, how are you tonight?
Hey, good afternoon, Warren. I'm fine.
All good? Okay,
That's good to know.
yes. And Connor, I see that you're here.
At this present time.
Hi, everybody. How's it going?
Good. This is Connor Hassick from Bridge Street Development Corp. Is your CEO going to join us?
She may be on. I know she's at another event right now, but I believe she may have some time to hop in on her phone.
Okay, so Mia, if you see her, her name is Oma Holloway. Say if I'm saying this right.
Holloway.
Holloway. So Mia, if you see her, just let us know, okay?
Sure thing.
And we have Mia, who is the assistant district manager from CV9, facilitating this meeting. So I think we will start.
Hey, good evening, everyone.
Good evening. Okay, so first I want to welcome everybody to the Economic Development Committee meeting for October 2022. And I'm glad everybody's here, and I hope everybody is doing well. I should start my video. Okay. I'm not as used to doing these Zoom meetings as I was like 4 months ago. And anyway, just you know, a brief overview, and this is important for Omar, is that the Economic Development Committee, the major thrust of this committee is to help educate and develop revenue for our store owners, contractors, residents, etc., and to provide the residents with more services from the store owners, as well as the contract services that are available. CV9 has a huge amount of independent contractors working in the arts, graphics, finance, and programming. So it's across the board. And as part of that, you know, as we discussed last month, we really want to look at, you know, some goals that we have. And the goal that I talked about last time was merging the Merchants Association with the merchants below Parkland Avenue, to merge with us from Parkland up to Empire. And it's been very difficult. We had a couple of merchants associations working here, probably about 4 or 5 years ago, but it's a very difficult endeavor. So in terms of our goals, so that was one of them. And the other one that I was thinking about was doing an inventory of what our major Carter's storefronts look like. Because the one thing I did notice is that all of a sudden there are, you know, from empty spaces, there are 4 or 5 more new stores and services opening from, I would say, Eastern Parkway down to Maple Street. And I'm assuming that part of that is that rents have been lowered based upon what's going on economically, and it gives entrepreneurs and existing businesses more time, or more, how should I say, is a greater opportunity to succeed. One kudo that I do want to give is that there is one restaurateur, and his name is escaping me at the moment, who has just opened up his 4th restaurant in Crown Heights. And this is a pretty famous guy. It's along Roger Avenue. The last restaurant that the name I do remember was called Kingfish. And he is just really investing into our community. And Rogers Avenue makes complete sense to me because the rents and the overheads have to be lower. And it really does run the boundaries for east and west, and with Prospect Gardens on the west side, and on the east side you have North Shore Avenue, etc. So that's good. So what I'd like to do now is turn this over to Connor to give us an overview of what Bridge Street is doing. And first describe what Bridge Street is, please, Connor.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, I guess I'll just begin by saying thanks so much for having us on this evening. It's a pleasure, and it was, I think, very serendipitous that I should be introduced to Warren and the work that you guys are doing on the Economic Development Committee for CB9. So close to your monthly meeting. I am coming from Bridge Street Corporation, Development Corporation rather, as the program manager of commercial revitalization. And I don't know if he had a chance to introduce himself when he was already on, but my colleague Alexander Katsoupas is also on this evening. Alex has been helping me with a lot of the work that we've been doing in the preliminary stages of the CDNA. I actually have a slideshow that I can pull up if I'm able to screen share, and that might help to make things a little bit more.
Yeah, I just made you a co-host, so you should be able to do so now.
Excellent, great, thank you. So let's see here. So yeah, just getting right into the meat of it. So Bridge Street Development Corporation was awarded a Avenue NYC grant this year, which will be essentially assessing about a 1.25 miles square district in the heart of North and some parts of Southern Crown Heights. The reason that we received that is because Bridge Street Development Corporation is a community-based nonprofit. We service Central Brooklyn, and we do that in multiple different areas. The one that I am primarily involved in is economic development. Bridge Street has been around for about 25 years, and Bridge Street not only helps out small business owners in the area, we also provide resources for workforce development, youth workforce development, senior housing services, and generally just community capacity building on many different fronts. We'll help with everything from landlord negotiations to community health and resource fairs, but essentially we're here for Central Brooklyn. We had the opportunity last year to start and complete a commercial district needs assessment for Bedford-Stuyvesant through the New York City SBS Avenue NYC grant. And that is kind of how we arrived at Crown Heights. But for a little background on what the Avenue NYC grant is, essentially it is a $300,000 3-year-long competitive grant that is funneled through New York City Small Business Services from the U.S. Department of Housing and Urban Development. And it basically targets low to moderate income investment areas like Bedford-Stuyvesant, like Crown Heights, as a way to get better understanding and a real tangible data set of the community needs and the commercial needs of neighborhoods across New York. So we did this in Bedford-Stuyvesant last year, studying a handful of corridors there. We were asked by New York City Small Business Services to do the same with Crown Heights, and we got right into it. So the first step, this first year of the CDNA, which stands for Commercial District Needs Assessment, is basically done in partnership with local CBDOs, storefront, or rather stores, property owners, everyone who might be interested in learning about the texture and the character of their neighborhoods from a commercial standpoint and what that means for the community in the area. The CDNA, essentially it highlights 4 things. So that's the existing business landscape, the physical environment of commercial corridors in the catchment area, consumer characteristics, and then finally suggested growth opportunities for that area, which is determined by the results of the many different approaches to learning about that business landscape, physical environment, and consumer characteristics. The first year of this 3-year study is the CDNA. It is this in-depth look at the neighborhood, drawing data from both qualitative and quantitative assessments of the area, interviews with property owners and merchants and consumers, as well as US Census data, which gets pulled by SBS and basically calculated for us. This is a really good example of what may result in this study. I suggest that everybody, if they have not already, take a look on the New York City Small Business Services website at some of the prior CDNAs created in the last few years. This one in Bedford-Stuyvesant, which we created, or rather, which we completed in the spring of this year, essentially it helped highlight some very interesting and important aspects of the neighborhood that weren't yet available. That data existed out in the ether, but had not really been, distilled. We learned that, of the, I believe, 6 corridors in in Bed-Stuy that we were tasked with researching, there were about 879 businesses. We learned that every year residents of Bed-Stuy spend about $4 billion in the neighborhood, but 2.5 billion, 2.25 billion is spent outside of that neighborhood. Things like that, obviously, for an economic development committee such as CB9's, that's really crucial data that, does not yet exist for us to point to. We also, in doing this study, learned kind of where that money is going. If you can see here, these were the corridors in Bed-Stuy we were tasked with assessing, but the trade area where money was being spent outside of Bedford-Stuyvesant extends out into parts of Bushwick and Crown Heights and Clinton Hill. So these are also things that we hope to learn in completing the CDNA for Crown Heights. Now to the question everybody's asking, which is really, where are we studying the area of Crown Heights for this project alone? You guys can see here, but essentially we have been told by SBS to look at these 5 key corridors, Atlantic Avenue being the northernmost boundary, and essentially excluding Franklin Avenue, the corridors that we'll be looking at are Nostrand, Kingston, and Utica, all the way down to Empire Boulevard. I'm sure this might raise some questions as to why not certain areas. I hear a lot about New York Avenue and different areas that are not captured here. But as I'll point you to, like I mentioned before with the Bed-Stuy CDNA, we end up learning a lot about the area outside of the boundaries given to us in this study by researching it throughout the course of the year. This is, we are right now in the first phase of the CDNA for Crown Heights. We are right now doing community capacity building. So that's essentially what I'm doing with y'all right now, chatting with different CBOs, governing bodies, elected officials, nonprofits, youth, workforce groups, basically everybody who might be interested in weighing in on this CDNA right now is free game. We welcome every conversation that we can have, really, to chat with people about what they'd like to see out of a project like this, what they're hoping to glean from it, and how they might be able to help us as we endeavor towards getting a really full, holistic picture of the neighborhood. We are also in the middle right now of property owner outreach, which is kind of how I came to be introduced to Mr. Burke. Essentially, the first step of the CDNA, as dictated by SBS, is that we reach out to property owners along all 5 corridors and essentially ask them clarifying questions about their relationship to the neighborhood, their experience as property owners, what they think is important for the betterment of businesses, for the betterment of other property owners. We are essentially, at the moment, going out every which way that we can in order to speak with property owners who, as I'm sure you all know, are a historically hesitant subset of people when it comes to trying to contact them and get information. The next step of the CDNA begins this week, really. It is the business inventory and storefront condition and streetscape observation cataloging that we will do of the 5 corridors in our area of study. So over the next 6 weeks, essentially, myself, as well as my colleague Alex, and other members of Bridge Street, will be going out along these corridors and shop by shop cataloging addresses, information, general observations about their storefront aesthetic, whether they're deemed welcoming or confusing, or if they're vacant, and then also looking at the streets in general to learn about possible beautification projects that could be done in the area. That's looking at sanitation, street lighting, safety, etc. When that finishes at the end of November, it will begin a 2-month-long, 2.5-month-long period of the general surveying we'll do for this project. This is by far probably the most difficult of the CDNA. We will be, basically returning to those corridors, asking merchants to tell us about their experiences as business owners in the area, challenges, strengths, weaknesses that they have with, the resources given them, and the general life of a business owner in the neighborhood. We'll also be, trying to reach as many consumers as we possibly can, to learn from shoppers in the area how they experience, the general commercial activity of the neighborhood. Thankfully, Christmas and the holiday season is a really good time for the Bridge Street crew to be standing on corners and flagging down people looking to go about their holiday shopping. We hope we'll be able to reach a lot of people by general outreach on the ground, on the street. But we also hope in that time that our partnerships with the many different community-based organizations and generally your CB9s and CB8s and relatively interested parties will be able to kind of help push out a lot of the surveying that we have as well, so that again we can get this holistic understanding of the commercial activity in the area. Yeah, just kind of reeling it back in a little bit. As I mentioned, right now in this first phase, what we are doing is our property owner outreach. We were given a list of about 1,037 property owners along all 5 of those corridors. In the past few weeks, we, with Alex's help, have wrote a code to find more intricate detail of the mailing addresses of those property owners, especially the ones who are operating through subsidiaries of larger ownership holding corporations. And we've also mailed out about 1,000 surveys to property owners at the date of this call. We are, as I mentioned, looking for more direct introductions to property owners. It's obviously a lot easier to call up a stranger and say, hey, would you tell me about that building that you own? If we have the support and the trust of an intermediary like CB9 or many of the different CBOs that we've been working with. But as it stands right now, we've got a couple preliminary findings, a few interviews that we've had so far that have introduced us to some interesting viewpoints from property owners in the area about businesses that they'd like to see and existing challenges right now. So you can see here, I heard from a business or a property owner last week that banks were something they believe they could see more of, and also that tenant rental laws had made property ownership for commercial property owners a lot more difficult in the past few years. That, in a nutshell, is the CDNA as it stands right now. We are, as I mentioned, looking for introductions and any assistance that we can get from the likes of organizations that might have those connections. Down the road in December and January, we're hoping we'll have the help of the community to help us reach out to consumers and merchants, and then generally we're also just always open to more conversations and partnerships with community-based organizations that we may have overlooked. I think one thing that's been really interesting in speaking with Warren last week is just the presence of the merchants down on the other side of Nostrand Avenue on the south of Eastern Parkway, kind of coming back into the fold. For a little bit of historical context, Bridge Street has a relationship with the North Nostrand Avenue Merchants Association. And we worked with them on the Destination Nostrand event that happened in August of this year. We had a really, really exciting event. We actually shut down about 6 blocks of Nostrand Avenue for a full day, which everybody tells me is the first time it's ever happened in collective memory. And that did wonders for the Merchants Association, kind of like reintegrating themselves back into the neighborhood after a period of malaise. But you know, they were just operating on 6 blocks, and now they're pushing towards Eastern Parkway. And I understand you're interested in, you know, in kind of extending merchants associations to sort of fill in the gaps. And these are all things that I think, you know, having these types of conversations are really important for. So yeah, I'll stop. I'll stop being a windbag, and I'll open it up to you guys if you have any questions.
Okay, Connor, thank you very much for a terrific overview. I just want to see who's on this meeting. Okay, Dexter, do you have any thoughts or questions?
Not at this present moment.
Okay. Okay, I have many.
Yeah, please.
Okay, hold on, I gotta get back to this. I'm on my phone. So anyway, Connor, first of all, thank you. I think this is a terrific opportunity. And having worked at this for years, I was economic development chair back in the day. We had a lot of things going on and a lot of promotions, and you know, my whole take is to increase revenues and provide services. That's the bottom line. And you know, from that you get investments, you get employment, a whole bunch of benefits. So number one, I like this program. And number two, we will certainly try to help you with what you need. In, you know, speaking candidly, the whole thing with the owners and property developers will have to speak about. Because that, as I told you on the phone, is a very difficult thing.
Yes.
What was your response in Bed-Stuy from property owners? How did you do there?
That's a great question. So the Bed-Stuy CDNA was unique in that that is where Bridge Street is headquartered. We are our offices here are on Nostrand and Jefferson, and the Bridge Street AME Church is on Putnam and Lewis. So, you know, having been a sort of an institutional nonprofit in Bed-Stuy for 20 plus years, there are a lot of relationships that Bridge Street already had with many property owners that they could kind of go to directly and get interviews from. But generally speaking, with this one, with the Bed-Stuy CDNA, and as we understand it from all the other ones being conducted across the city, it really kind of comes down to casting as wide a net as possible and hoping, you know, that you get of 1,000 business owners, you know, anything less than 10% would be appreciated. So what we do, like I said, is really just try to make direct connections. Yeah, go ahead.
Okay, no, that's good. The other thing is that, so you're working with CB8 and 9.
Yes, that's correct.
Okay, so I have a thought for you to consider and, you know, open to discussion. Since you said your Nordstrom event was so successful, prior to COVID, we used to have a shop local holiday event.
Right.
And that fits into your well, could fit into your November, no matter, when it was. We had it between Thanksgiving and the holidays. But if you would like to do a similar event with CB9, lacking an Merchants Association, we're certainly capable of doing that to promote our businesses as well as aid you in your data collection, especially with consumers, and residents. So it's something we can talk about, and if you're interested, we can flush it out. But in my mind, that's the way you do it here, because people in Crown Heights, from is my personal opinion, like events, like free things, and come out for free food. And I say that experientially. So that's, that would be a terrific thing for our committee to do. As a matter of fact, it would be something that would have to be kicked up probably because of manpower to the executive committee and the community board, but it's certainly things we've done in the past. The other part is in terms of your data collection, where we can be of help, let us know specifics, and we'll see what we can do. Especially, I'm extremely interested in your survey of the storefronts, because things are changing rapidly, and I think they're changing for good, but I don't know that. And the other part is with your last part. How do you turn, and you don't have to answer this question now, but this is something that I would like to focus on. How do you turn your findings into actions? I mean, if you go back to your, and this is a solid question. If you go back to Bed-Stuy, the numbers are fantastic, that the residents of Bed-Stuy spend like and I'm just estimating now, 4 billion, and half of that is spent within Bed-Stuy, and the other half is spent outside of Bed-Stuy. And in your presentation, you were speaking about, in the surrounding areas, which I would have questions about per se, versus going to like merchant density, like, Fulton Street or the big stores, or, what I'm saying, the whole thing. And so that's something I'd like to see. And the last thing is the real question always comes down to, how do we attract businesses here? And that's the thing that concerns dollars. That's where you get to helping people, all right, whether it's the business person or the residents. And if you take Franklin Avenue, okay, as an observer, merchants and restaurants and services go to the cheapest dollars. Okay, so if you take Franklin Avenue, it really started up by, let's say, Dean Street, and it started moving down Franklin Avenue, and it's fairly well developed. Okay, we had a similar thing at Flatbush Avenue, and I'm not going to ask you why not Flatbush Avenue, because it's not happening, where we had a terrific improvement on the businesses there and entrepreneurship in restaurants. That was sort of quelled down by COVID, but it's still a pretty good area.
Right.
And in terms of Nordstrom and Utica, Utica's sort of, I have to be honest with you, I don't know that much about Utica, but we'd like to learn because that's in our district. And Kingston Street is a world of its own. And that's something we need to talk about. Did Rabbi Cohn give you his assistance? Did he say anything?
Yeah, the rabbi was very helpful, at least in these preliminary stages of helping point out. Specifically, he basically went through my list of 1,000 property owners, and he said, this guy lives in the building that he owns, that he runs the business out of. So we did get about a list of 15 or so property owners, but generally speaking, yeah, his attitude is you tell us what you need, and we'll help in the best way that we can.
Okay, I have some suggestions I can give you offline.
Yeah, for sure.
Because I don't know this as a fact, but there is a large ownership by Hasidic community,
Yes.
whether it's on Nordstrom, Kingston, Utica.
Mhm.
So we have to really define that. And as I said prior to you, the other problem here is that there's such small floor plates that it's a barrier to larger businesses setting up. All right, so something we could talk, but I really appreciate it.
Yeah,
If you could send us this presentation.
absolutely.
We have an executive board meeting, I believe, tomorrow night. No, tomorrow's Wednesday is the executive board meeting, and I'll bring this up, and hopefully the committee will approve it, and it'll go to the executive board, and it will improve working with you. And then we can
Absolutely.
flesh out the details. But this is very important. The last thing I want to say for the people on the call is that we've worked with Bridge Street before. There was a president, I think his name was Peter something, I forget, but they were building a facility on Maple Street for transitional housing. And we worked with them, and this goes back 6 or 7 years, probably 8 years, and there was a lot of pushback from the residents. But we worked closely with them, and they were able to build it, which, as a personal opinion, that's true affordable housing, for our residents, especially people with mental disabilities. So my experience of working with Bridge Street has been excellent, which is important. And that's really it. So I want to thank you. Any other questions from the floor or statements? Okay.
Well, I guess I'll just say, it's much appreciated, you taking the time to speak with us again, and your interest in and understanding in the importance of a study like this. I could expect as much from the Economic Development Committee of the community board, but all the same, it's still a real pleasure to hear your enthusiasm. Oma, our executive director, did just join. Sorry, I mistitled her, our chief operating officer, but she's still the executive of my life, as it were. And I did just want to quickly answer your question from earlier, Warren. You had asked really what is the end result of getting information from a study like this. And I think the answer is whatever you need it to be, really. I think creating the CDNA as the first step in this initiative is just having a tangible, hard data set that speaks to, from an eagle's eye view, but even down to, down to the perspective of the consumer in the area, what the character and the profile of Crown Heights is from a commercial standpoint, but also, from a socioeconomic one. And having that to point to is crucial in making decisions about the neighborhood going forward. It's useful to your local electeds trying to get discretionary budgeting for streetscape improvements. It's important for business owners to speak to when rent hikes happen. These are all things that we don't at the moment have that we can lay out in a single booklet, and that is really what we hope to do in this first year of the CDNA, is have that information readily available to us so we can start making decisions about kind of where we go next.
No, that's correct, and it will be very useful, especially in terms of funding. And we do have good relations with our elected officials, so if we have some backup, it would obviously help. So, Ms. Holloway, would you like to introduce yourself and say hello?
Hello, good evening. My
Good
name is
evening.
Oma Holloway. I'm the Chief Operating Officer for Bridge Street Development Corporation. I really apologize for being late. I'm actually at the DA's office right now, meeting about one of our upcoming programs that will be held in Bed-Stuy. But I'm sure Connor gave you a very comprehensive overview of what we're trying to do with the CDNA in Crown Heights. We're really excited about this opportunity. Will be a great resource, and some very important data will come out of it that will be something that the community can use for their own stress to strategize about what they want to see in economic development in Crown Heights. So, thank you for the opportunity to actually introduce it. We hope that we will have, we are available to answer any questions you may have and to hopefully continue with the collaboration so that this is a document. This is something that really captures what you need and what we see in your community in terms of economic development and what's happening to the business corridors, and also serve as a tool on getting funding and other policy changes or resources to your community to make sure it supports your businesses as you see fit.
Terrific. Number one, this is something we're very interested in. Your point about having the data to move forward in terms of implementing programs, totally agree with. And three is that Connor did an excellent overview. So thank you.
Putting that in my review. Now, yeah, just to wrap it all up. Again, many thanks, Warren, and the Economic Development Committee here this evening. I'll send over this presentation to you. I can also send you, you had asked me last week for a list of property owners that we had determined had multiple properties.
Great.
So I will send that over to you. And like I said, if there's any that jump out off the page to you, let us know, but we'll be in touch.
Well, we'll ask around. My last thing is, if possible, can you share the Bed-Stuy study with us?
Oh, absolutely.
Could you send that over too, please?
Sure thing.
Which would be great. All right, thank you so much. And we look forward to talking with you in the near future.
All right. Thanks, everyone. Have a nice night.
Right. You too.
Thank you.
Good
Take
night.
care.
Okay.
Thank you. A good night, everyone. I really apologize up in the middle, but
Don't
we
worry
really
about
appreciate
it.
the time. Thank you.
We were in very capable hands. Thank
Right.
you. Good night. Okay. So I think the only committee member on is Dexter. Is that correct?
Yep.
I think so.
What do you think, Dexter?
Well, it's something that I'm not too big in. I think it's the information that he would probably give to you would be very beneficial in terms that you're able to know how many, something like, people want to know how many individuals own more than one property. And that was like a good question that you did ask, because that didn't come up in my mind, how many business owners within the area own more than one business or one property, that kind of stuff. So I think that overall the work with the Bridge Street might be very beneficial to the economics committee.
I agree. I mean, it's a win-win situation for us because it does give us data, and data could lead to financing and change. So I agree with you. Okay, so in terms of the agenda for committee goals, I think we spoke about that. In terms of old business, I don't think we have any. Is that correct, Mia? Yes. Okay, in terms of new
I'm sorry, I was
business.
sneezing. No.
Oh, that's sneezing. Okay, and in terms of new business, I think we just had that. So if all is well, I will adjourn this meeting. And Dexter, I thank you for coming.
No problem.
And I will review this with the executive board when we have our meeting, as well as going from there, the full board. Okay, so thank you so much, everybody. Thank you, Mia, for
You're welcome, you're
facilitating.
welcome.
Thank you, Warren.
You're welcome.
Take care,
Dexter,
Dexter.
Dexter, thank you
Mia.
for being 100% of the committee, and that's terrific. All right.
All right,
Take care,
guys, have a
everybody.
good evening.
Have a nice night. Bye-bye.